Yo, what is up? We're gonna try to cover a lot of stuff here fairly quickly. Let me just share it out. I don't actually have another window going, so let me just get another window going. I just gotta grab the link. Oops. Did not mean to click that one. There we go, we grabbed it. Let's get it into the TG. Okay, so what are we looking at? What's going on? Wishing everybody a good evening, good weekend, wherever you're from, whatever you're doing. Oh, I just missed it. Damn, I drew this out on House Coin here. I was saying this looks really good for continuation here next. We might see like a little bit of a flag form and then continue off. But anyways, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're from. Andy's Crypto Talk here, and we're just gonna chat the shit. I haven't been making many videos because the market was not looking very good, and there wasn't a lot to talk about at that time because things dried up inside of the crypto ecosystem, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Plus, at the same time, I had a lot of life involvements that I had to partake in. You know, having been my birthday, Easter, all sorts of things in between. And you know, I do appreciate your guys' patience with me. I have made a few videos, but my last one hasn't been for quite a few days. But we're back now, and I'm going to do my best to be consistent throughout the next, at least I would say 6 months, because I think this is a really important point in the markets. You know, this is something I would even look at the volume starting to really pick up into these markets on something even like the S&P is telling of what's kind of coming next. You know, we're dealing with volatile times, so that's just something to understand, that I think this is similar to the volatility that we've been now expected to deal with on a week-to-week, day-to-day basis, with tariffs, with you know, of course, just overall craziness going on involving the presidency and the United States, and those affect bigger picture things that you know, are rocking right now, and that's why we're seeing a lot of volatility. So the VIX, of course, you know, pumped out of this zone that we talked about. We didn't want to see it get above this blue line, and that this would be the bear case if this happened, and we got that move. You know, basically right from around here, from near the end of March. Although I would even say near the end of February, you know, we started to see this rising volatility, and then we had a big spike. And now it looks like it's correcting actually really nicely. So at least coming down to this to tag it and see if it bounces again. But at this point, like, we're at the whim of this massive bull flag. You know, since 2020, I think if you look at this in an even longer time frame, it sort of is more telling of this potentially moving up. And that'll just mean more volatility, right? So that's why we see the pickup in things like the volume in the S&P, right? But over a long time frame, look at this. This actually looks okay. If the monthly closes like this, that's a big hammer, and it could just continue on to the upside. So dollar index is actually dumping, so this is a good scenario. Under this level, these two levels we had made here, this was important for us to break underneath. to see a lot of risk assets starting to move up. That's why we see in the last couple months here risk assets finally starting to make a bit of a move up. Actually, I would say within the last weeks more so. So anyways, keeping an eye on this, because see, that was kind of the break of that guy there. So keeping an eye on this to continue going down. But you know, we could see a little bit of a bounce at some point here in the dollar. M2 money supply is, you know, we talked about this breaking out, and we saw this massive spike up in February. So I think this is just continuing on upwards. But moving on into crypto, the crypto world is getting interesting. And we can see here on the USDT dominance that it kind of got rejected right around this level here. And that was an important level for it to overcome to continue this bearish momentum to the upside. I think that's a good scenario that we're seeing now, that potentially we'll see this kind of stagger out over time. That's the dream scenario for this, that all that money that went into stables starts flowing back into the cryptos, and we start seeing these lower percentages starting to be hit. Of course, with that having been said, you know, our BTC dominance, it's went up to its target. So we talked about this. You know, I know we talked about this following our trend here. I think eventually here we're going to start to see it come back down. It might happen actually within the next few weeks even, unless this decides to continue pushing on higher, in which case, you know, we could see it come into the 70 region before it really moves down. Although I think we'll see what happens. I think it's due for a bit of a correction. At least this style, like a mini correction potentially, just to, you know, at least give all some room to breathe, if it does decide to continue moving up higher. But we'll move over to BTC and let's see where's, I guess this is our most recent chart we were looking at. Yeah, this is probably our most recent chart we're looking at, and you know, we talked about how we came out of this trend here. I think that was the last stream. I talked about how you know, it's an important point that we're breaking through, and we want to see continuation of the upside. You know, we cleared this 90K region I had marked out, and I think right now we're just testing this sort of spike area around 94, 95. The underside retest of this. So, I mean, that would be interesting if we could get back into this, trend line. We could see some major pushes to the upside. To see something kind of like this happen and structure out would be very, very bullish, and we could see quite parabolic rallies. At least get something like this. You know, at least to get something like this over there. So, you know, marking that 140, 150 range, maybe spiking up to the 170. I'm actually going to leave this on the chart because that's a very interesting pattern that looks like, you know, this could kind of play out. Something like this could potentially play out. We could see a little bit of bearish sort of fake out scenario here, where it then does that, you know, to create this larger time frame inverted head and shoulders, and make like a little mini inverted head and shoulders, kind of double, like Inception style, and that would be very powerful. That I would say would be like the midterm selection. And of course, there is a potential scenario where it is bearish and we reject here. So this is an important point in the markets. You know, do we do that? Do we double bottom then continue, or just reject at that point and just go to zero? So really, these, I would say these last ones are the ultra bearish scenarios. This one could be kind of the caution scenario. And this would be, you know, cautiously optimistic scenario. So kind of watching for those to play out. I think this one would be the least unfavorable. The orange one would be the least unfavorable for a lot of people because it would continue going sideways for a long time. But you know, it just depends on whether we're selling May and walk away or we're buying May and pray. So that's something to pay attention to. That's BTC, I'd say, in a nutshell on the larger time frames. Let's turn off the drawings, because I mean this still looks structurally good in the long term, especially with what it's doing right now. But again, just watching for that, like this type of structure to happen again right over here before we move up, that would be pretty painful for I think a lot of people. So we could potentially kind of sit in this sideways range, which, you know, some people I've heard talking about, the 90 to 100 and sort of 109, 110k range, or it could be even in a tighter range, doesn't matter, between 93 and 104. So kind of watching that for the BTC. ETA Ohm. Ohm died, I thought. I'm gonna take a break here and TA Ohm because I thought this thing died. There's Spot Ohm. What is this? How do you TA this, bro? This looks like Luna. What do you want to know, Dennis? Aftermath. Do you want to know if it's a good buy or if it's goodbye? Is that what you want to know? Like, it went down 83.88% in one day. GG, well played. I don't know, do you YOLO like $100 and pray it goes up? I would not, personally. I would not. Let's go back to some reputable tokens like Ethereum. Griffin. Yeah, we can do Griffin. This is crazy that it's visiting these lows. It might as well go right to the bottom of these lows, I guess, and double bottom. I don't know. I don't like ETH. I don't do this anymore. Not ETH. Let's see if I have Griffin. It's on Binance? Oh, that's a perp. I don't want to look at a perp. BitGet would have been fairly soon after it launched, so let's see. Look at this. BitGet was like, no way. We will not let us go into negatives here. Griffin, it looks good. It will look better when this flips on the daily. I think, let's see, on the 10 hour it's flipped, so that looks really good. That these lines have flipped and it's green now and it's recovered. The 200 on the 10 hour is good. 12 hours about to cross and it's got a little ways to go. So I think, you know, this is a really good risk to reward for Griffin, assuming they continue to deliver and people are continue to be interested in AI. I think this is a good time to position into something like Griffin. This is kind of your box range for the bottoms. Yeah, I would say that because this is the midpoint. Once you're above the midpoint, it should become much easier. So I would say you want to see it stay above this box range and sort of make some form of motion here. You want to see it kind of start to move up, and then when this comes down, I might not go that far. It might start turning around right here. So, well, not quite that sharp. It takes some time. So it might be something like that, and then you want to see it recover that and continue on up. It's not going to go up this sharp though. Like, that's really badly done. It might do something like that. That would be more likely. So to see it, that would be a better scenario. once it recovers that line. We'll see. I'll leave it like this and see how I drown. But at least staying above this box range is important for Griffin. Of course, on that note, you know, we'll talk about Citadel, because that's like the pup of Griffin is Citadel. And this is, I know I've got it's a bit of a mess, but this is all important levels that I've come to draw at some point, and we respect it to certain degrees. One thing I would get you to notice is this white line right here is the point of control of the entire lifespan, and this volume profile, what we're looking at right now. And this is why we're seeing, yeah, Griffin is the puff of Citadel. True enough. The student will be better than the master at one point is where my bets are, to be honest. So 4.3 down to like 1.7, you can see this is kind of the heavier volume area for this entire lifespan of this token. But above where we're at now, at about 3 mil to 4 mil, it's a bit of a gap. So I think once we overcome 3 mil, next sort of move up, you know, we'll quickly move to this 4 mil target. This is an important point for us to break, and hopefully we don't have any sort of troubles breaking it right away. Otherwise we might stay in this sort of range for a little while, which I have, you know, marked out. Let's sort of zoom out, or zoom in, sorry. And you can see I have this sort of zone marked out with a lot of lines, and that's because there's a lot of inflection points here. You know, we could go down and test this 1.8 region. I would say we don't really want to lose that region, but the ideal situation is to just continue moving up from here and sort of overcome around here 2.9 mil. You can see there's sort of important stuff back here. There's a lot of interaction with 2.9 mil, and I think that's kind of the midpoint of this lower range, and this is the deviation outside the range, back within the range, and it reclaims quickly up. You know, it's having some issues in the middle point, but next sort of move we should at least tag the 4 mil before we decide, do we come and revisit the 2.9 before continuing, or do we continue just pushing on through past 4 mil? See this volume sort of node, we can see if we just take a certain time frame, like take this set of time frame. This is the most recent volume interactions, and we can see kind of in the middle here, this is where we're spending some time. Next, move up into this 4 million mark, and then we'll have some resistances through this area until 7 mil, but I think till 7 mil is pretty important that we continue pushing on strongly, because once we get there, that's really like, okay, now is the decision point. You know, are we going to revisit some of those lower targets, some of those maybe 5 mil, 4 mil, or is it off to the races? Because we can see less and less volume up on this VPVR moving up. Full ported in OG. Nice. I wouldn't full port anything, but honestly, if there's one thing that I have a lot of confidence in, is something like Citadel, just due to the nature of the team, and this could be, you know, test pump, and then real pump. We could see some of these larger targets that I have laid out here. You know, once we kind of make it through all of this potential resistance, you know, again, I don't think, like, once we move out of these lower numbers, even past 10 mil, it's going to start moving exponentially faster. And something like 100, this sort of 50 to 140 million marker, this is our first area of interest. I think that'll be hit pretty quickly, 90 mil being like that kind of middle mark of that area. And then the highest sort of fib extension for the next move is 230. So that could be, you know, like this is test pump, real pump, and then we see, you know, do we dig deep and then continue? or what happens here from continuation or a rejection and then continuation. It's all possible. So what happened there? My page ended, I guess. Yeah, my page ended. So I think that's enough about Citadel. I think you know exactly where my stance is with something like this one. Looking at the daily, like again, you can see where you want to be breaking up past to make it easier to move to this next sort of level. And then from that level, we can see it's, you know, it's quite high, 21 mil. So I would say 7 to 21 mil could get overcome very quickly. That's where we'll see, you know, what it decides to do up into the next one, 31 mil. And then at that point, it's, you know, you're in these all-time high areas, which we don't even have a daily close higher than 33 mil. So that, I would say, once we're closing above 33 mil, it's almost in price. It's like, it's basically, you could consider it price discovery at that point. So that's looking at sort of the short-term and more long-term scope of that. Let's take a look at Housecoin, because I was talking about this one. So, and some posts right here. You know, this thing shoots up from, what is that, 10 mil to 30 mil quick. Like, this was quick. We're on the 1 minute, so whoops, let's go on the 15. That'll make more sense of it. 15, 30, so in an hour it went up 3x. It then corrected from 32 down to about 20 and then pumped to about 47. So you're looking at another 2x in about an hour and a half. Pretty damn quick. Again, it looks like it's ready for this next move. Could just be retesting this, revisiting this level that we marked here. Right around where we're at, 37.6 potentially, and then continue on up. Kind of like that, right? So bounce on this level and then continue on up. And it's funny that it closed, that's the highest close it had on a 15-minute. But then correcting. There's a lot of, I guess there's a lot of trading going on with something like this. You know, Ansem gives it a tweet, and I think there was 170k views on the tweet. So, and that was within, you know, a couple hours. Either way, like, I grabbed a bag just for the meme. It's one house equals one house coin. I'm not shilling it. I'm just talking about it. It's up to you what you want to do. Not financial advice on anything that I talk about in this show, because I'm just talking about what I look at. This one's crazy, Bob. Like, this was a crazy play, up to 43 mil. It recently corrected quite hard all the way down. It hit under 1 mil. And I think this is what we're looking at right now for Bub, is this kind of range to break and sustain, because see, we broke it and then it didn't sustain. And I think they're targeting, they want to get 5 mil so that Binance supports them even more. There's of course chat about a Binance listing at some point. I think this is pretty low market cap, pretty low volume, but still holding a moon bag of this one. And I still feel that this is this has a potential just because of the artist. But anyways, one more thing. Let's cover Solana. Because that's, you know, that's the baby. That's what helps us get our meme coins going. So highest daily closes here. And that's what I wanted to talk about. Like, that's why I brought up Housecoin, is I wanted to show you guys that the trenches are pretty back, you know. This guy ran up to, you know, 10 to 50 mil in a day, and there's this other one, Let's Bonk. So this one ran to 29 mil in one day. So that's a quick move to go from you know, 70K. I think this was a pump fund. Yeah, or not. I don't even know what is Let's Bonk. I have no clue what it's about. I have no idea what it's about. But all I know is it ran to 30 mil. Fast. Lots of volume. Millions and millions of volume. So I think trenches are back to a degree. They're not back like they were before. But seeing things move, seeing things starting to pump, you know, we saw this Citadel 93% in one day, and this wasn't a lot of volume, to be honest. Like 500K in volume, there was maybe like 100K extra buys over sells that drove price up like this, and that's why, like, this Sol ETH stuff, because there's a lot more action happening on Solana. That's what's telling of that. You know, this is nice because I think we're creating that inverted head and shoulders look for Sol BTC. So, like I said, potentially looking at a really good month for May, June, at least Solana summer type thing. So looking at the USDT pair, we toyed with the danger line here. You know, we lost it actually for a few days. We lost the danger line, but ever since V recovered, we're actually back above these important points. Like, we're right around these important points between 140 and 150. Those blue lines are really important points that I have. Regaining these and continuation would look really, really good for Solana, but we could even see something as bad as down back onto the danger line before continuing to see an inverted head and shoulders. Although it doesn't have to do that, we can continue V recovering right up, and just kind of doing something like that around the 180 mark. I know there's a lot of people talking about it, so I would say a lower potential as well to take more time until June, you know, near end of May correction and then right back up. But this is what I would look at for Solana. Maybe we'll leave those lines on there. XRP we haven't talked about in a while, and it's looking pretty but it's also pretty good. So an interesting point for XRP here. It could take a little more time until it fully corrects out of this, but it's strong. Like, I just don't like XRP for what it is, but I'll trade it to make money. I don't care. One that we've been seeing outperforming is Sui, and look at that. Wow, interesting. So I had this long parabolic sort of arcage that I drew out here. Interesting. So it took a little more time to do it, but it got pretty close to what I'm saying. Right around here is an interesting inflection point between 370, 340. We'll see. Maybe it flags out and then continues. But that's, I mean, I drew it out. I think this is important to pay attention to as well. If we see it come down and then bounce and reject. But Sui really looking good. Moved up from $1.70 to 380 fairly quickly. Couple days, 5 days. So couple altcoins for you all there. Let's look at the totals real quick. Total 1, yeah, it's recovering. So looking good out of this recovery. This flag came a little deeper. You know, let's give it a real. This flag came a little deeper, but it's recovering now. It's testing this 200-day. So I'd like to see it recover this 200-day and then move. Once it recovers that 200-day, it should move pretty quick because we see bounces off that very, very strong. You know, recovery and then move fairly quickly off of that. See, even like here, even when we were in a correction, when it recovers this, it moves up quite quickly, quite a bit, quite quickly, moving up out of this quickly, quite a bit. So this is an important point in the markets to pay attention to crypto, all of it. Total 2, I think that's doing so piss poor because of Ethereum, so it's not really worth looking at total 2 anymore. I would say pay attention to total 3, where again we saw a much deeper correction than we anticipated. We're gonna get rid of some stuff here because I don't like looking at it anymore, and it's irrelevant at this point. What's important now is this flag correcting, and it's looking really good actually. If you were to talk to me about flags correcting, this looks good. Sort of a tight flag at this sort of portion of it, and now correcting up. These markers I have overcoming 830 to 840 billion, and again breaking out of that 200. We'll see something like this, I would imagine. Breaking up out of that, we can see some major upswing, and that'll coincide with total 1 going up above that, because again it's rising tide lifts all boats. So stay tuned for the next stream. We'll definitely do another one this week at some point to see how some of these lines play out and things. Stay frosty, stay on the tips of your toes here, because you don't want to sink in too deep into a position and hold it through a potential downfall. If we see a correction at any point, sort of like a shakeout before the real breakout. But again, I'm personally looking at longs at this point. It's looking good for the most part to move on up for crypto. So thanks for tuning in to Andy's Crypto Talk. Check out the links in the description, and as always, like, comment, sub, all that fun stuff, and we'll catch you in the next video.